To get a better idea about specificity, let's go into our simple web page and set some styles inside of styles.css. First, I'll go inside of here, and it's currently empty, and say that all paragraphs should have a background color of green. And if I save that, you can see that the background color on both of the paragraphs that are inside of the simple web page, they both turn green. However, now let's target this paragraph, which is a child element to this div. And if I write a rule that says, please set the background color of paragraphs that are inside of a div to something different, let's pick gray, then that rule will set this paragraph that is inside of a div to have a background color of gray, because this rule that has two type selectors in the rule is more specific than the rule that just says set all paragraph backgrounds to green. And I could even make a more specific rule that targets this paragraph by ID. So I could say when you see something that has an ID of content, then please set the background color to fuchsia. And it doesn't matter the order that these rules appear in, they are all different rules. This one is selecting paragraphs inside of a div, this one is just selecting paragraphs, and this rule is more important than that rule that is just selecting paragraphs. This rule that is selecting by ID is more important still. And if you think about it, this is the way that you want CSS to work. When you make a more specific rule, you're probably targeting very specific elements that are on your page. You want that rule to work against those specific elements. But when you're making a general rule, like this one that is setting the background color to green, that's not as specific. That's generally trying to set the background color to green, but there's always going to be exceptions if that paragraph has an ID of content or if that paragraph is inside of a div. Now there's one more catch to specificity that I should probably point out, and that is a rule that is embedded in a style attribute is the most specific. So if I come in here and I set the background color to black, that style rule is actually going to win out over any style rules that are inside of styles.css. So indeed that paragraph turns black. So let me take this inline style out once so that we can go back to seeing the actual text that's inside of here. And let me point out something else about these rules. When we talk about a rule winning, we're not saying that this rule completely replaces all of the settings that were in the lesser rules. In other words, if I come into the rule that is selecting all paragraph tags and say that the font size for all paragraphs should be 2em, which would make the font quite a bit larger, you can see that applies to both paragraphs. Even the paragraph that is inside of a div, because there's no other rule, more important rule, that is trying to manipulate the font size. And indeed, if we come into the developer tools, if I hit F12, we can go to that particular paragraph tag that is inside of a div, and you can see here are the property values that were actually set on that paragraph and where they came from. We set the font size using a rule that was selecting all paragraphs. We also tried to set the background color, but that particular property setter was overwritten by a more important rule, the one that was trying to select paragraphs inside of a div and set the background color to gray, and that particular rule was also overwritten by a more important rule that was setting the background color to fuchsia for anything with an ID of content. The styles that appear in these developer tools for Internet Explorer will be ordered according to their specificity, and that is why the pound content appears at the bottom. But you can see that multiple different rules can still have an impact on our elements, even when they're not the most important rule that could apply to that element. This rule was the only one that was trying to set the font size, therefore that particular property set made it through.